These shoes, they may look like some old, worn-in dress shoes, but these belong to my grandfather. He died when I was 4, back in 1981, so I don't really have any memories of him beyond stories that my mom and dad would tell. I can't remember exactly how these came into my possession. If I remember correctly, my dad showed them to me and I tried them on and they fit, so he gave them to me. That was a fun revelation for me, that 3 generations, my grandfather, my dad, and myself, all wore the same size shoe. These are the little interesting human clues we leave behind. I look at these with a lot of fondness, you know. I think about the places that my grandfather would have walked in these, the decisions that he made while these were on his feet. By my best guess, I think these go back probably to the 1950s. Maybe it was his work shoe. Of course, back then people dressed a little bit more formally on the daily than we do today, but he was likely a young father out looking to build his life when he was wearing these. One of the things I love most about well-made leather products is the stories that they can tell. It's like leather archaeology.
That cross is an important artifact. It belongs in a museum.
You can learn a lot by just sort of being a detective. For these, I can't be sure what year they were bought. You know, it's a classic saddle shoe that hasn't changed much since they started making these in the early 1900s. It's made from, probably I would say, a calf skin. It's got a nice tight grain that polishes up really well. You know, I can tell that Grandpa had these re-heeled at some point. This is an aftermarket heel, but I think these are likely the original leather soles. In the right light, with a little magnification, I think I was able to deduce that this was made by the brand Alden, which is a footwear maker out of New England. They've been doing shoes, really nice shoes, since the late 1800s. You can see here the Made in the USA stamp. That was maybe not quite as novel back then as it is today, but you know, I still love to see that. And you know, Alden, they built these to last a literal lifetime. In actuality, it's probably more like 2 or 3. I mean, what are these? Almost probably north of 75 years old. You know, throw a buffing cloth on here, little polish. You could probably take the Pepsi challenge with these next to ones that were made a lot more recently than these. That's how nice of a piece of craftsmanship these shoes are. But I thought this was a great example of sort of the inspiration for why I got into the leathercraft business in the first place. The idea that we own and choose things to wear or carry every day that say something about the things that we value. Items that are durable and great looking, that wear in instead of wearing out. But this idea of longevity in my work is how I set out to design and build my products when I started in 2012. It was under this sort of unknowable notion at the time that if I used the right materials and with a lot of care and handmade craftsmanship, that they might last a lifetime or beyond. Building something from nothing is about making some choices, really making some bets. And only time is the appropriate judge or jury for those choices. This bin right here is a repository of all the wallets that I've designed and carried personally over the past 10 or 11 years. Have all the design choices that I made back then stayed the same? No, absolutely not. This is the first iteration of the San Juan wallet. It has the old logo and everything. You know, oh, I even stamped the date on it. July 1st, 2014. Wow, I should really go back to doing that. Yeah, this takes me back. You know, I'm always my first customer to please. So before I even take anything to market, I'm carrying my own designs for quite a while to really understand more about how they wear and how they carry. And that helps me make decisions about whether or not it's worthy of being on the website or being sold through us. This one in particular means a lot because it was the start of all of the wallet designs that have come since. But you know, the one thing that has stayed the same, even as I've updated this design over the years, is the leather that I've used. You know, speaking of bets, I made a bet back then in 2013 or 2014 on the particular leather that I wanted to use. And it's still the leather that I use today. It's the best leather in the world, according to me. From the Horween tannery, it's called Dublin. And I use it in a number of different colors. I think it wears the best. One of the cool things about Dublin that is interesting is the Horween tannery out of Chicago, Illinois.
The question isn't what are we going to do, the question is what aren't we going to do?
Been around for like 5 or 6 family generations. And this Dublin leather goes through the same process that they use for their shell cordovan. If you don't know what shell cordovan is, probably one of the finest leathers in the world that's made at Horween, but it is made from a very specific portion of the horse butt. Now, my family, we have a long relationship with many horses out there in the world, and one thing is in common with all the horses that we ride, they have names. And that's sort of the line that I draw in the sand for where ethically I want to work with specific materials. So Dublin gives me the best of both worlds, giving that great durability and beauty, but being made from steer hide and not horse. But the process for tanning Dublin, you know, it spends over a month in basically a big bath of tannins and liquors that are derived from tree bark, a special proprietary blend of barks that Horween puts to the leather, but it leaves a very rustic finish on it that allows for it to just age beautifully. When it's finished, they put a sort of top coat wax that again allows for that durability. They call it pull up. If you sort of run your fingernail underneath the leather, you can sort of see as the waxes sort of move around, but with a little pressure and a little heat from your hand or fingers, and you can move those waxes right back to where they came. So if there was a blemish or something that happened to scratch, you know, you could just rub your hand over it, sort of smooth it out because of that waxy finish. It makes for a very, very durable leather. Then of course, you know, this bin continues to have a lot of evidence of this particular leather. It's one of my favorites that I carry a lot. But again, over time, in and out of your pocket, you know, it shines up to just like this incredible sheen. And it's one of the real joys of my life to be able to see things made from Dublin leather that comes back to me, you know, maybe 9-10 years after the fact, and I can see just how beautiful it continues to age and you know, tell the story of the owner that has been carrying it. And that to me is really the fun part of this job. These become, you know, artifacts of not only my company specifically, but for those who carry my wallets. They become part of their story. Everyone is going to age differently, and I know that to be sure. Will it be around 75 years after the fact? Yeah, I think it will. Thanks for joining me on another video. I'll see you on down the trail. Cheers.